We are going to look at today, we've been looking at training ourselves for godliness, and how do we train ourselves to actually be a worshiper? Okay, that's what we're going to look at today. Yeah, Sonia, you got? Those are things that roses grow up.
No, I think they're.
Anyway, what is worship? And if you could, on your paper, take a couple minutes and write a definition for what you think worship is. Okay? What is worship? Okay? Yeah. All right. So, worship, sometimes it's helpful to define terms like that. Because, worship is something, oh yeah, I know what worship is. But then when you actually have to write it down, you're like, how do I describe it, right? And it makes you think about it a little bit more concretely. All right. So, it's not a bad idea, even like the word glorifying. What does that mean? How do you glorify? What is that? Okay, so sometimes it's just a really good word idea to define some of these, we could call them religious words that we just like throw around and we don't really think about what they mean sometimes. Okay, so that's why I wanted you guys to just think about worship a little bit. I'm not going to define it for you because we're going to look at some scriptures that deal with worship, and then maybe we can think about how can we be worshipers? How can we do the definitions that we wrote? Okay, let's check out John 4. Jesus is talking here to the woman at the well. And in John 4, verse 23 and 24, he says that a time is coming, and actually has now come. Okay, a time is coming and has now come when true worshipers will worship the Father in the Spirit and in truth. And they are the kind of worshipers the Father seeks. So God is Spirit, and His worshipers must worship in the Spirit and in truth. Okay, that's a mouthful, right? Worshiping God in spirit and in truth. In a lot of translations, spirit is not capitalized, and there is no the. So it's like worshiping in spirit and truth. Okay, so in Greek, the word the isn't there, and so in English, then it's like, okay, are we talking about worshiping in the Spirit, capital S, or are we talking about worshiping in spirit? All right, so it can be a little different. What do you guys think it means to worship? We'll say worship in spirit, or worship in spirit and in truth. What does that mean? Really meaning the worship. Okay, good, and believing it. Worshiping with your all. Okay. Yeah.
Not like thinking about yourself.
Oh, that's a real good point, right? Not thinking about yourself. Yeah, if your form of worship happens to be singing, right? That's not the only form of worship. But yeah, it's so easy, right? To think about yourself. Yeah, I sing, but just not by myself. Yeah, I sing solo. No one can hear me. Okay. Matthew 15. Matthew 15:8 is another one. These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They worship me in vain. Their teachings are merely human rules. I just want to focus on the beginning part here. And this is actually, Jesus is referring to something that Isaiah said. Isaiah the prophet, right? These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. So we could be singing good words or saying good words, but our hearts could be far. What does it mean for your heart to be far from God? Okay, not in the Lord. Oh, you're living more in the world than in the Lord. Okay. Saying the right things, not really believing them. Yeah. Not worshiping in spirit, whatever that means, right? Ooh. Yes. Worshiping because you're supposed to. Yeah. Yes. All of those things. Yeah. Okay. So we want our hearts to be in it. Okay. Whether we're worshiping in song or not. We want our hearts to be in it. All right. What about Romans 12? This is, I think I preached on this maybe a month ago. This is probably one of my favorite verses about worship. Okay? It's one of my favorite verses about worship. It says, Paul's writing, he says, I appeal to you, I beg you guys, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Right? I love it when the Bible defines the terms for us. What does it mean to worship God in spirit? Well, maybe we can get a clue from this verse here. I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice. What is a living sacrifice? A living sacrifice is where you are not your own boss anymore, right? A sacrifice is pretty much dead, right? So this is a living sacrifice, though. All right? So that means we are giving up control of our lives to Christ. Right? We really want to be led by Him. Do we want Him to tell us what to do? Worshiping in spirit and in truth, worshiping with your heart, means this. Do we really want Him to lead us? Again, isn't it easy to say, oh yeah, I want to be led by the Spirit? Do you? Like, really want Him to lead you and guide you and show you what to give up and what to embrace? Right? Ruby, you got a thought?
Pastor Wells always says
Mm-hmm.
but you can make a choice up here, but that's not always what.
Oh, you can make a choice here, but that's not always what your heart feels. That's a real good point. I heard somebody say once, and I haven't really thought a whole lot about it, but they said that the difference between heaven and hell is about 18 inches from here to here. That's intense, right? Because we want to not just believe up here, but we want to down here. Now, what does it mean? Getting our heart into it. That's, this is a questioning face. Like, what does that mean, right? What does it mean to be thankful from the heart? Let's just talk about thankful. Okay, that's an easier word to think about. I think of a little child, and I think we've talked about this before. I say, all right, Johnny, say thank you to Grandma. And Johnny was not thinking. He was going to totally forget to say thankful. Why was Johnny going to forget to say thank you? Because he wasn't thankful, right? He didn't feel it in his heart. Right. So it wasn't in his heart, and therefore it wasn't in his head. Right? So, Johnny, say thank you. Oh, thank you. And then Johnny goes, right? Johnny just opens a Christmas present. And he's like, yeah, this is great. Oh, Johnny, say thank you. Thank you. And, his back is like, That's an example of poor Johnny getting it put into his head for a minute, or a fraction of a second, actually. And then he's right back. He's not really feeling it in his heart. That's what we don't want to do to God, right? Okay, we're talking about how to be a worshiper. How do we not do that to God? What does Johnny need to do to actually be thankful in his heart? Now, we're talking about little Johnny. He may not be very capable intellectually, but theoretically, what advice could you give little Johnny to help Johnny be actually thankful? Because that same advice, you could take it yourself and become actually a worshiper from the heart. All right, so Johnny's playing with his Christmas present, and you want Johnny not just to say thank you, but you want Johnny to be thankful. What do you counsel Johnny to do, June? Okay. And again, we are assuming here, and that's great, that's perfect. We are assuming that Johnny is capable of analyzing some things here. Okay, so you want Johnny to stop and think for a second about the sacrifices people made to give you that toy. That would help Johnny feel thankful, wouldn't it? Theoretically, right? If Johnny had a more developed brain. Okay, what else? What else could we counsel Johnny? Okay, that pretty much summed it up. June hit the nail on the head for everybody, it sounds like, right? We would say, Johnny, stop playing for a second. Would we say, Johnny, it's evil to play with that toy? No, dude, we gave you the toy to play with it, okay? But we would say, hey, just pause the play for a second and think. Think about who gave you that toy, right? Think about, they are not infinitely wealthy, right? I mean, Elon Musk did not give that to you. So, let's think about the sacrifices that grandma and grandpa made, to give you that toy, right? Or what else? What else? Come on, guys. You got to give Johnny some help here. He's in trouble. He's not even thankful in his head or heart. How do you help Johnny? Help him more. What do you do? Okay, that's all we'll do then. All right, so we hope that's good enough for poor Johnny. All right, how can we apply that to ourselves? As we go around our busy day, playing with our toys, or doing our chores, or doing our homework, or doing whatever we have to do, do it in a way that honors God, and maybe we have to stop sometimes. Go, whoa, what am I doing? Who is allowing me to do this? How can I cultivate? We can help Johnny cultivate true thankfulness for his toy truck or whatever. How can we stop? Do the same advice that we gave Johnny, right? How can we stop and go, okay, wait a second here. School. How can we worship God going to school when we hate school? When we'd rather be playing with our toys. Right? I mean, if we're honest. Right? Right? We say, wait a second here. This is opportunity time. We got to think differently, guys. We got to think differently than the world. Okay? This is opportunity time to think differently about school. Look, there are people in this world that they're growing up dirt poor in some other, some African continent. Africa is the continent. Anyway, some African country, and they don't have the opportunities I have. Wait a second. I need to reorientate myself here. God has given me some pretty good opportunities. How can I change my mindset, right? If we do happen to be singing, we could think, why are we singing? Are we singing because it's Sunday at 9:30 and that's what we do? Sometimes that's what happens to us, if we're honest, right? But maybe we should think about why should we be singing? Why should I feel in my heart gratitude? Follow the same advice you give to Johnny, okay? And then, of course, live out of that, okay? Because that's what it means to worship. You've got it in your heart. You give your life. Why give your life for God? Because He's worthy. Do we really feel like He's worthy, though, right? In general, people do what they want. I do what I want, and you do what you want, most of the time, right? Most of the time, that's what happens. Later this afternoon, what are you going to do? What you want. Pretty much what you want, right? I mean, that's how it goes. What is God after? God is after our wants. God is after our wants. Okay? Here's a good question. This is a mathematical equation for you. Sort of math. Does singing plus church equal worship? No. Good. That's right. It does not. Okay? Amos 5:23. I don't know when the last time you read Amos was. But Amos 5:23, this is God talking. He's like, away with the noise of your songs. I will not listen to the music of your harps. Stop singing to me. He's telling this to people in the temple. right? Our worship songs can have great lyrics, and God could still be, shut up! Stop! Ooh, let's not let that happen, guys. Isaiah 1:14. Your new moon feasts and your appointed festivals I hate with all my being. This is God talking. They have become a burden to me. I am weary of bearing them. That's some strong language. All right, now look at this. New moon feasts, and appointed festivals. If you read through the Old Testament, these are appointed. Appointed by who? God. Yeah, God appointed. God said, hey guys, I want you to do these new moon feasts. I want you to do these festivals. I want you to do them. And he's like, I hate you doing those. Right? Do you see that? He appointed them himself. And he's like, I hate those feasts you have with all my being. Oh my goodness. That is huge. Right? I am so sick of bearing them. They're a burden to me. Stop it. Right? That's because they are mixing sin with their feasting. They're mixing selfish, sinful living. They're not feeling worship in their heart. That makes sense? Okay, so does singing plus church equal worship? I'm thinking no. Oh, yeah, that's true. If I would have thought of that, right? Check out Malachi. Malachi 1, verse 10. Oh, that one of you would shut the temple doors so that you would not light useless fires on my altar. I am not pleased with you, says the Lord Almighty. Now, who commanded sacrifices and fire on the altar? God. And he's like, oh man, shut the temple, lock it up. So we never want God to feel that way about us, right? I hope. I never want God to say, man, lock the doors of the church, man. That'd be terrible, wouldn't it? So why don't we do what Jesus said and worship in spirit and in truth? Right? Let's follow our advice that we give little Johnny. Okay. Check out Isaiah 62, verse 5. And I'm going to go through several verses pretty quick, so you might just want to jot these down and don't take the time to turn there because we only have I don't know, I guess we're good. That clock is still fast. Good, never mind. Isaiah 62:5 says, as the bridegroom rejoices over the bride, so shall your God rejoice over you. Guys, think about that for a minute. It's so easy, like, okay, that's a neat Bible verse. Think about what that says. As the bridegroom rejoices over the bride, so shall your God rejoice over you. Now, so far, I've been trying to talk to you guys about worship, how you should feel toward God, right? I just wanted to hit the pause button for a minute. Just like we tell Johnny to hit the pause button and consider something. Do you think on the day of a wedding, the bridegroom, pretty happy about the bride? Yeah, I hope so. Okay. And so God's like, hey, he's taking basically the biggest human relationship that we can think of. And God's saying, that's how I feel about you. That's how I feel about you. How sad is it if the bride could care less? Wedding day. Bridegroom, like, oh my goodness, she's coming down the aisle. He's like, he cannot wait. And the bride's just like, oh, I can't believe I'm doing this. Like, yeah, it's almost, it makes us laugh. Like, are you serious? Like, that is the most ridiculous thing ever. That is the most ridiculous thing ever. That is the saddest thing ever. And that's what it's like if we are not worshiping God with our heart. Do you see the analogy there? Do you see how sad it is? Like, for God to be loving us so much and rejoicing over us so much, right? In Philippians 4, we've been talking about rejoice in the Lord. Why? Dude, he's rejoicing over you. He like celebrates you. He thinks, man. And we're just going to blow him off. That is like sad. Think about it. If you're in love with somebody and they blow you off, dude, that does not feel good. And if you read through the Bible, doesn't it describe God as having a broken heart? And grieving? Like you read in Genesis, I forget what chapter, is it chapter 6? Where the people are so wicked on the earth. This is right before the flood. It says God's heart was full of pain. So think about how much God rejoices over you. And let that be a motivator for your own rejoicing over him. You see? And so Isaiah says, I'll greatly rejoice in the Lord. My soul shall exult in my God. For he has clothed me with garments of salvation. He has covered me with the robe of righteousness. That little for right there is kind of a because word. It allows it to be possible. So again, this is like telling, hey, Johnny, think about what God's done for you to help you rejoice in the Lord, Johnny. Okay? So rejoice in the Lord. Why? Dude, he is offering us salvation, like eternal life. And a robe of righteousness, he's teaching us how to live so that we can, avoid hell, but also avoid like the pain of so many sinful choices along the way. What happened? Did I do something wrong there? Oh, exalt is spelled with an A. This is exult.
I can say that one more time.
Exult instead of exalt. Exalt? Huh? Yeah, we're going to look at the difference between them in a second. Let's look at this. Okay. You like that little transit? Yeah, I learned how to do that this week. Okay, so 2 questions. Okay. 2 questions. What false gods am I tempted to worship instead of God? And how do I get my soul to genuinely exult in God? Okay. When you exult in something, okay, let me explain what that is. Exalt with an A is like where you lift something up. Exult is where you're like, yes. Okay. If the Lions score a touchdown later, some of us might exult in that. We won't exult in that. We're not going to like take the Lions and like put the TV higher. Okay? But we're going to be like, yes, right? That's exult. Okay? So it says, how do we, from that verse in Isaiah, how do we get our soul to genuinely exult in God? And what false gods am I tempted to worship? Because see, throughout the Bible, we read about false gods stealing God's worship. People worshiping idols. Now, nobody in this room is tempted to bow down to statues. Okay, I'm pretty sure. My lesson in youth group on Wednesday is not going to be about how we should not bow down and sing to statues. Why am I not going to teach you that? Because nobody's tempted to do that. Okay? So we need to identify, though, what are the false gods that I'm tempted to worship? See, if you snack all afternoon, how hungry are you going to be for dinner?
Probably still so hungry.
That is so not true, okay? No. All right, let's say you eat like half of an apple pie at 2 p.m. You eat a gallon of ice cream at 3 p.m. And at 4 p.m. you eat a dozen cookies. You are not going to at 5 p.m. Oh, I'm going to be so hungry.
Those things don't stick. Those things don't
Okay,
stick.
you're going to be in a coma. All right, you're going to be in a sugar coma. The point is here. The point is, have your parents ever said, you're going to ruin your appetite?
All the time.
Okay, every single day. All right, listen, guys. when we're talking about this, what false gods am I tempted to worship? We're basically looking at what are you tempted to snack on so you're not hungry for God. You're so busy snacking on the world that God just doesn't seem to taste very good to you. You see what I'm saying? See what I'm saying? And that happens. That happens. You can be so excited about this thing over here on the world, and God isn't very exciting to you. What are you tempted to worship, and how do I get my soul to genuinely exalt in God? That's the end, and that's what the rest of your paper is for. Okay? To think about those two questions. Okay, so take a few minutes. See if you can, and that's for you, to keep the paper. I mean, you can write it in your journal or on the paper, but to think about that. We got to identify the false gods so we can smash them. Boy, so many thoughts about roses today.
I mean,
Hey, we're not supposed to judge.
Now, if I were you, I would be thinking, why did he choose roses? Was it?
Because they're pretty, but they have thorns, and then
There's a specific reason I chose thorns, or not thorns. I chose roses today on purpose. It wasn't just there's a purpose I had for it. So I'll tell you. I'll reveal that in a little bit.
I'd be like, oh, I guess.
So these two thoughts, these two questions, guys. Could I challenge you guys to think about the false gods in your life this week? And how do you get your soul to exalt, to rejoice? Exalt is like a fancy word for rejoicing in God. And I would like to challenge you guys to think about it throughout the week, and maybe next week, whoever's comfortable, if you'd like to share kind of how your week went in light of these two things. And share, like, if you felt like you were able to draw closer to God with your heart instead of your head. And maybe I'll ask you guys to share a little bit about that next Sunday, okay? If you want to. All right.
wow, it's actually part of the presentation. That's crazy.
I told you. I predicted. See, I'm getting to know you guys, kind of. You know. Why all the roses? Why all the roses? Here's why. Right?
Someone famous.
What does it mean to stop and smell the roses?
Actually, I created that quote and I'm not. Sometimes people like, I don't know if people and they just like work really hard on like what their future's gonna be all the time, but if they don't stop and enjoy what they have.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I think a kid is so.
Yeah.
You have to like look at all of the things that you, good things you have around you.
Yeah, good.
Living in the moment.
Living in the moment. Stop. Slow down. Just like we told Johnny, right? Stop, Johnny. Yes. Because you guys, you won't truly thank God for the roses unless you stop and smell them a little bit. You see? You smell them, you're like, yeah. Unless, of course, you're allergic to pollen like me. But at any rate, you can stop and smell the roses. Stop. Think about what God is doing and has done and how much He loves you. It'll help us. Okay? So that's why I chose roses, because I want you guys to stop and smell the roses. Everything I've said today about worship really makes life better. I'm trying to help you guys to rejoice in life, to love life, and loving God is the key to that. Right? Loving God more and more. Ooh, life is just sweet. It's like bride and bridegroom. It's wonderful. Are you raising your hand, or are you just kind of, I'm just relaxing, man? All right. Any other thoughts out there?